No, 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 no. Grab your charger. Grab your charger.
All
and
right.
what I'm going to do while you're doing that, right, is I'm going to check that we are truly, genuinely live.
Got it.
I don't believe these things. So what I do is I go to my profile. I want to see me. I go to my, we're live, I think, because I don't see it quite yet. We are live. Oh, I'm live. I'm live, and Darren is not live just quite yet, I don't think. Now what I do is I'm going to turn down my music. And this is so exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to be discussing, this is going to be part 2, right? This is really exciting. I really enjoyed part 1. And look at Darren approaches. Darren enters stage left. So this is going to be part 2. We did part 1, I guess, about 3 months ago. I know it was very well received, and it was a lot of fun. And it was well in advance of the election. And we really didn't discuss politics as much as we discussed kind of the roll-up of power, right? That's a very interesting subject for me. And we were just discussing, you and I were just discussing it right before we went live, when you were still here, right? Because then you walked away. And we were discussing kind of politics, right? In a very respectful way. So we're going to continue with that. So much has happened. And Darren, would you be kind enough to spend a little time just introducing yourself? Would that be all right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my name is Darren Beatty, and I've had a number of career trajectories throughout my life. Began, I suppose, as an academic. I gained notoriety as a professor at Duke University, where I was the only non-tenured full-time academic to incur the not insubstantial professional and social risks of endorsing then candidate Donald Trump. After that, I served in the Trump administration for a period about a year as the president's speechwriter and policy aide. And since I've been a political advisor, strategist, theorist, and I'm involved in a smashing new website called revolver.news, which has been endorsed by everyone from President of the United States to Tucker Carlson to Steve Bannon to a wide and dynamic cast of characters on Twitter. And most recently, to the great consternation of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, I was appointed by the President of the United States to serve on the Commission for the Preservation of American Heritage Abroad. And I'm very honored by that appointment and look forward to discharging my responsibilities with great care, attention, and success.
Yeah, that's exciting, and I did see you with that award. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just as satisfying as receiving that award, which is great. And I'm told that my official title throughout my life is the Honorable, which is quite something.
Really?
On the basis, yes, on the basis of this commission. But the most honorable aspect of it, I would think, well, one of the honorable aspects is that the ADL really, pulled out all the stops. They tried to destroy me. They tried to get the president to withdraw the nomination, and they were unsuccessful. And so I think in a year of disappointments and some defeats, I count that as a worthy success to go toe-to-toe with something as well-funded and vicious as the ADL and its disgraced leader, Jonathan Greenblatt, and come out ahead. So I am grateful for that.
Yeah, and honorable is awesome. I want to be honorable.
Honor is good.
Darn it, I'm not honorable.
Glory is even better, but I'll settle for honor for now.
Did you know that as a result of that, you are forevermore honorable?
This is not a legal distinction. I'm told this is just kind of diplomatic convention. So ultimately, it could be fake news if there are any of those kind of distraught cat lady journalists watching who seem to have dedicated their lives to picking through my trash on Twitter, they might take issue with this, find some technical objection, but I would say by convention, I'm the honorable, and that's how I was addressed when I received my commission. So there you go, Brandy Zadrozny.
So if there's an attempt to unwind Trump, right, or what any of what Trump did, right,
Yeah.
and to make history have never happened, which might occur, I think it's going to occur. Is there any way that they can roll back? Because I think I read somewhere that once it's done, it's kind of cast in stone, but stone can be recast also. So what is kind of the process of unwinding such things?
Unwinding what in particular?
Unwinding your honorable and the appointment that you received.
No, I don't think that's very likely. I haven't looked through the entire legal aspect of it, but my understanding is that sort of thing would be largely unprecedented and is very unlikely to occur, and that my term will expire no sooner than February of 2022. So I suppose in some bizarre sense, I will be a member of the new Biden administration. So
yeah. What do you expect from a new Biden administration? Are you surprised? And we discussed this many months ago. And one of the tests that I put people through, I see Jack Murphy here, so I have to say hello. Jack Murphy is awesome.
Great guy.
And he is a great guy. Now, let me do this. There we go. He is a great guy. And I recently, about a week ago, rewatched his discussion, his interview with Alexander Dugin.
Okay. Interesting.
Really, really interesting interview. And then I did some inquiry after because I didn't really know who he was. And he's a very controversial person. And somehow being controversial should kind of negate any type of intellectual contribution that he makes, because he said some really interesting things. One of the things he said was, if there's no truth, then there's no lies.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, right? Isn't that interesting?
Yes, it's interesting. Yes. And so, from a logical point of view, anything that you can prove anything with a false premise. So there you go. But yeah, he's an interesting guy. I haven't looked too much into him. I read his book on Heidegger, and I was moderately impressed, but I haven't gone extensively into his other writings or anything like that. So I can't really comment extensively or insightfully on Dugin.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing, because then I want to go backwards, right? I want to discuss the Trump thing again. I've been watching a lot of Jack's YouTubes and Periscopes. I like Periscope. For me, Periscope is like the movie theater. And he's been reading a lot. I mean, you can actually kind of see just kind of the pursuit that he's had of like some really good books and some really good literature, and trying to get a better understanding, because I'm doing the same thing, of kind of reality. It's difficult to kind of piece together such a fragmented reality. So he's been doing some really good things. So 4 months ago, maybe 6 months ago now, we spoke video, and I kind of gave you a little bit of a test. You didn't know that. And I said, I think Trump is going to win. In fact, I was certain of it. Do you remember that at all?
Vaguely.
Yeah. I remember.
Not terribly well, but it didn't quite turn out that way. But I think you vacillated. You kind of went the other direction, and I think I saw a tweet where you said, well, now he's going to win. So
I did,
and you never know. It was a hard thing to pick out. I always hope that he win, but sometimes the heart and the mind are not perfectly aligned, and this may have been kind of a situation like that. But he was up against quite a lot, and I mean, let's just get into the election of how really Oh, there's so much to talk about, but really it was set up for failure from the beginning. It was set up for failure from the beginning. And I think what a lot of, I feel bad for the tens of millions of noble and patriotic Trump supporters who did everything they could to elect Donald Trump. And it's deeply frustrating to understand that the loss was in many respects baked into the cake. For instance, once they allowed massive mail-in voting, and it was a statewide failure in conjunction with a nationwide failure. Statewide failure was there are many states that just allowed this massive mail-in voting in an unprecedented degree. A lot of states dropped the ball. Georgia dropped the ball, among others. And just the Republican apparatus was so weak and stupid and fake. It was set up for failure from the beginning. And so by the time you had people jumping on to the Stop the Steal efforts, maybe, there's nothing wrong with a Hail Mary attempt, but at that point it was already largely fake and performative. And you just did not have the sign of a campaign that was serious, that intended to win, that acted like it intended to win, that was actually playing for keeps across all dimensions. And it's an incredible disservice to the great people of the country who deserved and expected better. And I think so you have to look at it at both dimensions, that Trump faced very difficult odds with the mail-in ballots. And it could be that if the campaign, and perhaps more importantly, the Republican Party and the official Republican Party of the respective states, if they had done a good and serious job, it could be that it was still, the rug would still be pulled out from under them. But we didn't even get to test that out. And so now I think with Trump having basically given a concession speech, people aren't going to like those terms, but that's effectively what it is. We owe it to ourselves now to reverse engineer in a sober and serious way what the actual bottlenecks are to power and progress. We need to understand power. We need to understand the nature of power. We need to understand what is fake, what is fictional, what is fantastic, what is a quote unquote LARP, and what is real. And I think there's this sentiment on many on the right, because we're facing incredible odds. We have every single powerful institution in this country against us. Going back to 2016, by the way, to Trump's great credit, he ran against the coordinated opposition of every single powerful institution in the Western world. They hated him. They hated the American people who voted for him, and that has not changed. And that includes, by the way, the Republican establishment. But we need to be sober about what that actually means in terms of an effective strategy going forward. And I think people are so worried about the wave of psychologically shattering demoralization that occurs when you soberly look at the situation that we're in, that they flee to this kind of world of delusion that ultimately offers no path to victory. It simply offers convenient dopamine hits. It doesn't offer a real path to victory. Now, if I thought there was no ultimate path, then I wouldn't be as opposed to the delusional LARPing. But I do think there's a path. I think it's difficult. I think it's longer term. And I think it absolutely requires that we soberly address the true bottlenecks to power and separate what is real from what is fake.
Okay, hold on. Let's go back, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm really interested in this. Did you think Trump was going to win? And did you think, or do you think Trump could have won?
Well, my private view was pessimistic on that. I didn't think there was no chance. I would have, in private conversations, I vacillated between 25 and 40%. And of course, there's no point in demoralizing at the time. And so, just kind of, you go with the heart, not necessarily with the head, or you just formulate things delicately in order not to demoralize Trump supporters. And the reason for that, the reasons for that were, structural in many respects. First of all, you look at how he performed in 2016, and then you say, is this a floor or a ceiling? And in many respects, I thought, we were dealing more with ceilings than with a floor. People forget how thin the margins were at those decisive states. They forget how thin the margins were in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. Georgia was a very weird thing that we might talk about. I never would have guessed Georgia would be lost. And I think that's deeply suspicious. But Pennsylvania and certainly Michigan were always kind of a toss-up.
Okay, but hold on. Without getting into the Nate Silverish type of thing,
yep.
Because that's
well, no, I think
that's art form and not science.
Are important because but I mentioned the specific states only to emphasize how razor thin the actual margin of victory was in 2016. The electorally decisive states, go ahead, look at how much he won by in Michigan. It was a fraction of a percent. Pennsylvania wasn't much more. Okay.
I have to interrupt. Is that cool? Because we're friends. And if we were having dinner, I would interrupt because I'm an interrupter. Did you think Trump had a path to win? Or did you think, looking at it academically and looking at it as somebody who has a really good familiarity with kind of a historical framework, right? Mm-hmm. You've read Plato, you've read all the classics. So you also have a sense of how tyrannies turn inwards. Do you know what I mean? And what power is. You've kind of studied this, or at least you've argued internally with that conversation. Did Trump have a path to win, or was it always going to? Was his destination always going to be a loss, no matter what road he took?
Well, no. I mean, I think, of course, there was a path. It's just a question of what is the probability that path actually transpires, right? And so, there's never really a zero probability, and even mathematically, a zero probability does not actually mean impossible. So that's an optimistic claim. But no, there was always a path, but it was difficult to expect a victory given basic structural features that were baked into the cake here. And looking at 2016 more as a ceiling in terms of what the razor thin margins were, in terms of the age profile of his supporters, and I think largely in terms of the strategy that the campaign took. And this has become almost a kind of a cliched type of critique among many kind of in these circles. So I don't want to belabor it or overemphasize, but it is true that the Jared Kushner, but I don't even want to put it entirely on Kushner, but the approach of really making this criminal justice reform, this pandering to the African American demographic, and also pandering to these base Republican issues rather than kind of general populist issues.
Okay, but let me ask you a question.
What?
Let me ask you a question.
Yep.
Let me ask you a question. And I would do the same thing because we're friends. I would do the same thing if we were having dinner, right? I might do it more elegantly. Like I might order more water from the wait staff, which gives me the opportunity to interrupt, and then I would kind of cut in because I'm smooth with that. Yeah, all trick. It works really good, and just like that trick where as soon as you get the check, your guest and you've agreed to kind of split it down the middle or however it's going to go, and your guest disappears, and now you're like pondering it.
Right.
They've done that to me a lot. And the wealthiest people, too, have done that to me. Somehow I wind up picking the tab on some of the wealthiest people ever, which is cool. It's fine.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for how the country functions. The middle class ends up picking up the tab, right?
Yeah. Okay, so let me say this. I never thought Trump had a chance of winning. And I'm going to go back to my tweets, right? in 2016, I've been thinking about corporations becoming countries probably since around 2012, and maybe even before that, because I came out of Wall Street, and I always wondered what was going to happen when you can no longer kind of optimize your earnings in a humane and compassionate way. And then when I was a very large shareholder and when I founded companies and we went public, I saw the demands of Wall Street for sequential sequential improvements in earnings, even to the point where, you had to kind of check yourself and your own kind of peripheral people to make sure you didn't violate some type of ethical codes, right? Because it's really easy to do. It's a boiler room almost, right? And so I always wondered, after I had public companies and I saw the kind of outrageous demands, I wondered, when we could no longer trim the fat, what happens next? So I did see kind of this occurring somewhat. And I saw with Obamacare, which I'm kind of an expert in some ways, I saw them taking the burden off of companies and transferring it to the taxpayers and just kind of cloaking it in a lot of focus group type of stuff. I was very familiar with it. And the unions exempted themselves. But so I've been thinking about corporations becoming countries for quite some time. And I've been thinking about tyrannies turn inwards for quite some time. And I've been thinking about the militarization of the police for some time. And if I was a gun manufacturer, I would want to sell a lot more guns in the United States. And that requires a lot more disruption, social disruption in the United States. So in 2016, I thought Trump was going to win. I thought he had no chance in 2020. No matter what happened, he had zero chance in 2020. And I thought that the circumstances would be manufactured to arrive at that destination. And all maps, right? All the routes on the maps led there. On the Google navigation system, it always led you to a Trump exit. I promised myself I would not pay attention to kind of the ups and downs of his presidency. That I wouldn't, particularly in the last year, that I wouldn't say it's going to be a home run for Trump, because a lot of people were saying that, right? They were saying Biden voters, it's going to be a slam dunk. I didn't even pay attention to any of that. On the last day, on Monday, right? After being so adamant for so long and saying that Biden was going to be presented as FDR 2.0, it was going to be an enormous blowout. The megacorps were going to present him as a mandate. He was going to re-engage with TPP, WHO, and you know how I feel about that. And all these other type of really things that are just wealth extraction and really intrusive into what we think of as America. On the last day, on Monday, I was like, there's just too much weight behind Trump. I know a lot of Muslims that were, in fact, I think every single Muslim I know, perhaps, and I know a lot because I have property in Long Island City where there's a big immigration wave there. All voted for Trump, and I know people from Bengal, from Pakistan, and Trump is the kind of entrepreneurial dream. And while is there kind of attacking the white middle class or the upper middle class, they're afraid. They know that in 10 years or in 20 years, after they've acquired some wealth, that the mob is going to come after them. So, but on the last day, on Monday, I did a Periscope. I changed my mind, and I said I think he's going to sneak it through. I was stunned, actually stunned, at the amount of moral corruption that I witnessed in order to allow, the Biden to win. Just the amount of people complicit in his winning is pretty shocking, isn't it?
Well, it depends what your expectations are. I wasn't terribly shocked by it, just because I have a fairly clear picture of what type of country we're living in. I think it might be interesting to further explore this notion of corporations as countries. I'd like to get a better idea of what actually you mean by that, and what more you get out of that heuristic, rather than to say that there's this kind of, I think, unproductive framework that exists at the retail level of politics that distinguishes and makes a lot of this distinction between the public and private sector, not really realizing that once you get high enough into the power structure, the very distinction between public and private kind of evaporates. And so what does it mean to say that the corporations are becoming countries? And one kind of a way to tease that out, and it's related to certain tweets that I sent out the other day.
You sent out some awesome
tweets in relation to Jack Ma, and that is everyone's saying, "Oh wow, look at this! You know, the CCP is laying down the hammer on Jack Ma." In a way, that's true. That if that's the case, it's pretty brutal. But on the other hand, I think it's shocking to Americans simply to see a government, a state, exhibit real power over a corporate oligarch. That simply doesn't happen in the United States. In the United States, it is the corporations that call the shots and the lobbyists who write the laws, and it's the politicians who follow. And so there's something exotic and foreign about a head of a major company like Jack Ma was, who criticizes his government and, in a sense, by extension, his country, the power structure of the country, and they just crush him.
So I'll give you a sense of that because it's really interesting. Hold on, I'm going to order some water first, and then I'm going to see how I did that. So, I've got to also say there's a lot of questions here, and I want to be responsive to them. One of your tweets is one of my favorite tweets of all time, by the way. And it's going to make it into my chronicle. And at first I was kind of offended by it, right? And then I really thought about it. I was offended for like the first 30 seconds, but then I contemplated it, right? I had that internal dialogue and I was like, wow, this is a really powerful statement. It was some politician. I don't recall what her name is. Maybe, I don't know a lot of these people. Was
it Marsha Blackburn's tweet about Winnie the Pooh?
Yes, it was. And then what you said, okay, so it was Marsha saying something about how in China, it's a communist country and you can't criticize Winnie the Pooh. You can't criticize, you can't make any type of contrast or comparison between she and Winnie the Pooh. And you subtweeted it and you said, okay, I think you said something like, well, now do that with George Floyd. What was your exact tweet?
I said exactly, now do George Floyd. And I introduced a joke that's very relevant to this. It's an old joke that, it's a Soviet and a German living under Nazi Germany. And the Soviet is just complaining about how horrible things are under Stalin. They have no rights. They can't criticize Stalin. In fact, anyone who criticized Stalin goes straight to the gulag. And then the German under Hitler says, oh, you poor guys in Germany, we have much more freedom. We can criticize Stalin all we want.
That's awesome.
And that's precisely, the problem with Blackburn's tweet is that, okay, yeah, in China, it's no newsflash that you can't criticize President Xi, but let's not pretend like
it was a brilliant tweet. It was honestly, it was a brilliant tweet. And it took me aback because, I don't want to get in, in the intricacies of these social movements. And, I try and avoid such things because there's so much complexity and, it is what it is. And so at first I was taken aback, right? I didn't want to see a reference to it because of that complexity. And then I was like, you know what? He's really right. This is a really good point that, it is what it is. I think everyone can pick up from the point from there. It was really, really smart.
I think this is something that we all need to start ask ourselves because I think we both agreed on this. There was the political rhetoric of Beijing, Biden, that Biden would, be in the pocket of China. Maybe actually we disagreed with this, but I maintain my position that the Beijing Biden thing is largely a fiction. I think under Biden, we will continue with a very aggressive, perhaps even more aggressive policy toward China, because I think at this point, a neo-Cold War footing with China is baked into the cake from the standpoint of every faction in our ruling class, excepting perhaps Wall Street, which has diminished prestige, diminished stature related to what it was pre-2008. The military-industrial complex, it needs a new grift, it needs a new scam, and what better for the budgets than a new Cold War with China? Everything's converged. Even George Soros is saying basically we need to go after China and intimating we need regime change in China. So
can I get some
the
water?
entire ruling class is converged on this issue.
Can I get some water, please? Yeah, Darren, do you want something to drink? Do you want some water?
I will hold off on the drink until I finish this point that the entire ruling class basically is converged on this issue that we must have neo-Cold War footing on China. They're going to ramp it up. And I guess I'm all for that. I only say that even as we saber rattle with respect to China and talk about, oh, how great it is we have these protesters in Hong Kong, even as we basically call our own protesters here at home, at least insofar as they're pro-Trump, domestic terrorists, how much are we actually becoming like China? Do we really have more free speech than we do in China? And ultimately, what is at stake for regular Americans, even for this, for America to maintain its global hegemony with respect to China? I'm increasingly questioning the connection between America's stature as a global hegemon and the well-being and standard of living and livelihood of regular Americans. I think there's never been such a disconnect as we see now, and it's something we need to address as we go forward with this neo-Cold War with China.
All right, we've said so much, and there's a lot of questions here, and I really want to go back to them. And you make such good points. I've listened to the Periscope we did actually a few times, and I think about it. I have a good memory, which is a good and a bad thing because I remember everything, right? And but I think about it a lot. And you did reference China and several times, and I've been warning people about kind of that China is a leading indicator for where America is going for a long time in terms of social credit system, in terms of the relationship they have with their people. So I want to go over a couple of things, and then I want to get into some questions, but you said such interesting stuff. So first, with the megacorps becoming corporations, it's already happened, and it's going to become codified under Biden. I think Biden is going to see kind of a rewrite of the Constitution, right? I think it's going to happen very, very quickly because as far as the oligarchs are concerned, they need to start with a clean slate of marble, right? They don't want to chisel away at a statue that's already been created and then come out with a smaller and lesser perhaps. They want a clean slate of marble, so they've got to tear down all of history so as to make it as fresh a slate as they can. And however they accomplish that, I expect them to.
I have a related question.
Yeah.
Who do you think are the top 5 most powerful people in the United States?
Okay. Well, in the world, forget about it. Well, let's say in the Western world. You're thinking of the United States. The Westphalia Agreement's been thrown out the window, right? Okay. So I think about this a lot, and so much so that I've needed to just reread so much of what I kind of casually read in the past because I needed to get those thoughts that kind of all the turbulence in my head and be able to express it better. So now I'm an expert on the Westphalia Agreement, right? So it's been torn apart. There is no longer such a thing.
Okay, who are the top 5 most powerful people who are citizens of the United States?
Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, they're so strong. Probably George Soros now because he's an incumbent that has the most familiarity with the activist industrial complex, right? Which is available for lease, and he leases it out, right? Who else would I include? Well, there's, I don't know. I'm really observing kind of Google, what Eric Schmidt's been doing, what Jared's been doing over, Jared Cohen has been doing over at Google. I'm kind of amazed at how good they've been doing it. It's just kind of shocking, and how much they've infiltrated and embedded themselves and burrowed themselves into the government. And I think I've written about this before. They took over the State Department effectively in the last few years of Obama's administration, and they went into the Center for American Progress. Yep. So I'm not going to. I'm just going to list those four, okay. And I'll leave kind of a blank spot on the org chart for number 5. But I think that we've seen the complete reversal of the Westphalia Agreement, which I'm an expert on, so people should Google it because I just learned it, right? And we're now seeing territorial sovereignty, Germany, Britain, United States, being displaced by functional sovereignty. And the universal constitution for that is going to be the Facebook terms of service. We've already seen that happen. They deplatformed Trump. They're definitely going to be kind of prosecuting his followers. I think they're going to leave Trump alone. I think they're going to prosecute his followers and take away all the legs of the stool and just leave him with a plank of wood, right? And we're seeing the terms of service having effectively displaced our Constitution. And this is not just in the United States. It's it's done, and we're going to see that codified under Biden. And I'm a liberal; everyone knows that. And here I am, all the things that I used to spend money to stop, such as the roll up of media empires because of the damage it would do. That was like I would get those emails, and I would send money, and I would bundle money for all those politicians, and how oligarchs could take over. I was sending money for that. How we have to end wars. I was spending a lot of money on that. And here we are, the liberals and progressives are celebrating Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg's kind of being an interloper in this election. They're celebrating it. They're celebrating Bloomberg spending $100 million, and it can never go back. Ultimately, I think we're going to have a monarch. I think it's going to happen much quicker than people think. And if I was to suppose who it is, it's either going to be Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk right now. Either one of them will be easily a trillionaire. Easily. I mean, without any question. Jeff Bezos wants to control the logistics of space, right? And Musk is already controlling the apparatus and the ecosystem that will operate within space. And we've got some questions here. So I will say with Ali,
let me ask you kind of a bizarre question, and I hope the viewers don't take it the wrong way. It's just a thought exercise to gauge, kind of what the nature of power is, and maybe it doesn't even conflict with what you're saying. Do you think that Jeff Bezos could go on live television, use the N-word, and still possess the kind of power that you describe?
That's an interesting question.
And if you can't, what is the actual nature of his power?
Okay, so it's interesting. He controls the pipes, right? People think of Amazon as just, how they shop and kind of this monopsony. Well, now it's a monopsony, but before it was a monopoly, right? Mm-hmm. And something that handles kind of the technological infrastructure for a lot of countries, including the United States. And I guess the same is true with Bill Gates. So I would include him as number 5. But I would say there's probably like 10 slots I could fill within the United States for the org chart. And while as Google controls kind of the people operating system right now, which is kind of interesting to observe. So do I think that Jeff Bezos could do that? Well, it's an interesting thing to ponder, and I will ponder it. But it's also the way kind of the American media handles leaks and such type of things, is they drown them out. While as in China, they just don't permit it. And anybody who's going to leak, they just kill you. In America, the response in our fiscalized system is to just drown it out, because there's been some great Assange is in jail. I mean, it's craziness, and there hasn't been any good, potent, pristine leak since then. So, but Jeff Bezos will. Space is not going to be what people think it's going to be. There's going to be tens of trillions made. Hopefully America will be a participant. But so when you say America is diminishing its role, the America that is diminishing its role. The America that I foresee has won the world with China. They've won it. It's just that you think of America as this nostalgic type of thing because you've studied the founding documents and kind of what I think of as the artifacts. I'm not a nostalgic person. I'm not going to reminisce about something that was. I never read the Constitution. I don't like the direction. I wish we had less chaos. But what we have that you're reminiscing about is like it's like a former girlfriend or something. If only I had said this or done that. It's irreconcilable now. And we
Well,
discussed.
no, I'm looking at the past. I'm looking at the future, and I'm looking at the material that the United States has to work with, or what is associated with the United States, including American companies.
The United States is all the time.
That Amazon is not a powerful company, or Google is not a powerful company. I'm not even saying that they won't, kind of ultimately exert relative preeminence over anything coming out of China. I do think, though, that the relative ability of the United States to project its power on the global stage is diminished. And I also think that's a good thing. I think as America becomes a tyranny, we're not really morally separated from China, at least at the regime level. I don't think the American regime is any better or any worse than China, or if it is, it's only slightly.
It's no longer an American regime.
This trajectory is not good. And so another kind of point that I've been pushing is the silver lining. If it's not a saving grace, it's at least a silver lining of multipolarity. And that is that so much of the poison that we see, the cultural poison that we see, is so inextricably connected now with the American regime and the American power structure, including the corporate power structure, that the relative diminution of America's prestige and status could actually be a good thing, insofar it actually creates an opening for an alternative. And at the very least, it means that the taboos enforced by the hammer of the American regime are not global taboos. In China, you can say some things that you could never say in the United States without getting destroyed. Just like in the United States, you can tweet about Winnie the Pooh. That is the advantage of multipolarity, and why I think that increasingly it's a good thing for America's prestige on the global stage to diminish, because the people who control America are corrupt, dysfunctional, and
Would you rather your paycheck be in Amazon stock or in American currency?
Well, I mean, it depends what.
No, it doesn't depend. You asked me a question. You asked me a crazy question. I get to ask you a crazy question. Would you rather get paid in Amazon stock, which has gone from $400 to $2,500 and it wavers? So I'll just leave it there. In the last 4 years under Trump, would you rather get paid in Amazon stock or in the US dollar?
It's a good question. Half and half.
Okay. Which do you feel is more responsive to your kind of inquiries to it, to kind of the customer service, to mediation when it's required? The US government or Amazon or Google or eBay?
I mean, I don't see a distinction of the sort that you're suggesting between the private sector on that level and the regime as such. I think, the image that your question, I think, means to invoke is the low IQ moron at the DMV office versus, the logistics people at Amazon and so forth. And that, the answer to that question is obvious. I think it gets more complicated, though, when you look ultimately at, what allows Amazon to subsist in the way it does. How much of Amazon's rise in dominance is dependent on the factors that make the US dollar dominant?
Yeah. We're gonna skip along. We got to skip along, and we're not in a speed round. There's gonna be a speed round, you know that. But we got to skip along. I will say that Jeff Bezos and Amazon have created nothing. They've innovated nothing. Their entire business model has been arbitrage on taxes, and their entire business model has been kind of extracting U.S. taxpayer assets and the world's taxpayer assets and converting it to its own balance sheet. So, but I like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is my guy. But so the real Bossman, thank you so much for being here. And it looks like the Washington Redskins, right? And is that the Raiders in your icon there? So the real Bossman, thank you for being here, says, hey, want your thoughts on Trump conceding today. Darren, that's all you.
Well, I mean, I think it's an unfortunate end to it all, and I think that again, it's this issue of distinguishing fantasy from reality. And I'm not going to disparage or even criticize, what happened the other day. I think, given the nature of what the government is and what it's done to people, given the great crime against humanity of shutting down people's livelihoods, of beating them up, of subjecting them to this schizophrenic hell of, on the one hand, saying you're not allowed to go outside, and the other, oh, you're required to support these entirely fictional mass racial protests, of just what they subjected the country to over the past several months. I don't blame people for reacting the way they did. In fact, I think it's amazing that it was as subdued as it was. But I think it's unfortunate that many of those people, as patriotic as they were, most of them, were operating under a delusion. And that delusion is that they had effective, competent leadership to back them. They were going in with a serious mindset that we're going to take back the election and, by extension, take back the country. They were operating under the illusion that they had competent, real leadership, which they didn't. And in that respect, they're
Did you ever have that? Did you ever have that same delusion 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 6 years ago? Did you have a delusion of some type of I don't know, the GOP's got my back, or they've got some greater.
No, I never had that delusion, but I was at least hopeful about Trump, and I don't think all of that hope was misplaced. I think
I'm happy with him.
Trump was a real phenomenon, especially in 2016. As I said, he ran against this serious, severe, and vigorous coordinated opposition of every single powerful institution in the country, including the Republican establishment. And I think one of the most disappointing features of his presidency was just how much he got played by the very Republican establishment that tried to destroy him, beginning with Reince Priebus, and then agreeing with Paul Ryan's legislative agenda, and then finally realizing that Paul Ryan wasn't on his side after Paul Ryan had already taken him for a ride.
I've studied this, right? Because again,
but here's the most surreal thing. I remember he was giving a speech and going off on Paul Ryan for Paul Ryan's thinly veiled subterfuge and sabotage, and in the very same speech, he went on to praise Mitch McConnell, a well-known enemy. It's like, how do you not learn? And that's I
think about this stuff, Darren. I think about this stuff. A lot of people here know I'm keeping a chronicle of the fastest roll-up of power in history, right? And I've discussed this a lot. Mm-hmm. And I don't go on Twitter arguing about hydrochloroquine, and I don't go there either defending or attacking Trump or this or that. I'm just trying to be an observer to all of this. But again, I've had to take in a lot of philosophy and a lot of history because I never studied this before. And so for me, I've had to do kind of cram courses, and I've learned something, right? And it's just that when a new prince comes in, this is from Machiavelli, Discourse on Livy, right? When a new prince comes in, they've got two choices. Because you're coming in and you've got very hostile factions lined up against you because, the former prince, perhaps they were a tyrant, was very profligate. They were spending a lot of money, giving out a lot of money. And now the new prince comes in and they look at them as kind of a disruptor. And the new prince has two choices: either make friends with the nobles that are lined up against you and get them aligned with your interest, right? or you've got to kill them. There's really just nothing in the middle. And I didn't understand that until recently, because I think I toss and turn about these things, and there really only is two choices, and the bureaucracy of the United States didn't permit either one. And sometimes you know, and I study this a lot, and I think people should read some of these books, and I always discuss them. It's just kind of interesting. So I don't think Trump really was given kind of an alternative. I don't think there was any way he could optimize his position beyond what he had. They really did a good job of cutting him off. And one of the ways they did that is they didn't allow him to spend money as profligate and just give it away as much as Biden will be doing, or as much as Obama. So you've got guys like Max Boot, and their paycheck just dried up, and they want to go back to the tyrant. So it's just kind of interesting. And so I'm going to be responsive to that now, Real Boss Man. We have a lot of questions here. So I thought Trump actually conceded 2 months ago, you know, right after the election. I think that his advisors should have told him 4 years ago that he was never going to win re-election. He should have blown up the spot. He should have started calling out pharma and the military-industrial complex while he had that platform too. But his advisors—
the irony is he started governing with at least some degree of boldness only like after the election occurred. And so
it was absurd. He is a salesperson that sold himself, because he never had a chance at re-election. He should have blown up the spot, and now they're not giving him an opportunity to blow up the spot. They just turned him off. He's not allowed to say, look, this guy's Mitch McConnell's a crook and Elaine Chao is—
they turned him off partially because of this big tech problem. And, you know, it's, you know, I don't want to criticize too much, but I can't help but think, you know, wouldn't it have been nice if he had taken this problem seriously, you know, before? Then
have a choice.
You know, maybe they wouldn't have done that. Well,
I've been within a big corporation. I've been within the top of a big corporation, and people don't understand how bureaucracy and how kind of little fiefdoms within these things operate. And it's, you know, somebody who is not going to be able to come in, right? When a New York State controller, because I've known all these guys, right, personally, when a New York State controller comes in, they've got 20,000 people that have been there for the last 20 years that have built their own fiefdoms, they've built their own power structures, they've built their own ecosystem, and they can just wait out the new controller. They can wait it out for 4 years, they can wait it out for 8 years. I think that there is a kind of a misconception that just because Trump is the executive in charge, that he could have done a lot. And you and I will discuss a little bit more power.
Two different things. Look,
who has power?
He left a lot on the table that he could have done. I'm not saying that if he did everything he could have done, would he be able to completely reform the entire bureaucracies? No, but there was no actual serious effort to do that. And I think it would have been nice, just counterfactually, to see what would have happened if from day one you installed people who understood the respective bureaucracies, who fired as many people as they could have, brought in new people, and maybe after 2 or 3 years, you might have a bureaucracy that
there's never any chance
of doing it. I don't buy that there's no chance. There might have been a small chance, but that's not an excuse for having done relatively.
Okay, but if there was a small chance, that would mean that every single thing he did was optimal, right? And every single thing that his opponent did, or at least there was opportunities where his opponent was suboptimal.
I'm saying it's a thought exercise to see what if he actually did not even optimal. I think he was about at 15% of what he could have done. What if he had done 90%? It's not, these are not binary. These are not binary. It's not completely reform everything in the bureaucracy or do nothing because it's hopeless and impossible. There are gradations of this, and it could have been a lot better, and that would have reverberations for the longer term.
I did a Periscope with John Robb, right? And I thought it was great. And I asked John Robb about Trump's presidency and what Trump could have done or didn't do, if he was a disappointment or not a disappointment. And as you know, he's kind of a military tactician, right? He's not particularly a partisan type of person, right? Mm-hmm. And he said that Trump did exactly what he was there to do. He was a disruptor. What people wanted him to do was disrupt, and he disrupted. And you know, unfortunately, they threw the disruptive kid out of the classroom which happened to me. I used to get thrown out a lot because I didn't like French class. But his was a little bit more, I suppose, loud. So I saw a question here, and it was really interesting. And I'm going to be responsive to it first because I've been thinking about this too. I think a lot. So after yesterday, so Allison Rogers, thank you so much for being here. And I can't quite make out that picture, but it looks like maybe a palm tree. I hope someplace there's like a kitten in it because I love those things. So Allison Rogers, thank you so much for being here, says, after yesterday, do you think Ali was set up by the GOP establishment? I'm going to respond to that first. And I've listened to Cernovich, to his periscopes. I tell you, I watch him more than, I don't watch TV, and I certainly am kind of glued to Periscope lately. I think it's a great platform. So according to him, what he believes is he doesn't believe they were as much. He thinks they were Antifa. Many of them were Antifa because there weren't any Antifa protests going on at this big MAGA type of rally. So he thinks, or he's suggesting that that's kind of an indicator that they had already kind of infiltrated and they didn't want to have any visibility as being kind of an antagonist for this thing. So that's what Cernovich said. But he also said, right, because I want to reflect his comments accurately, he also said that he recognized a lot of those people. And he said that's why we've thrown these people out of his own type of, I don't know if he has rallies, but of his own type of meetups and his own type of kind of convening, right? He said he's recognized those people and he's thrown them out. And he also said one other thing, because he's an expert on this part, right? He said that perhaps there could have been more of a regimented screening of who those participants were going to be. And it could have been kind of divided up into sergeants. And I don't know how they kind of regimented, what Ali was doing. But I think Ali was set up. I saw this coming months ago. I was even reading lately about how the FBI kind of does this type of stuff. And unfortunately, they're not busy catching criminals like the Pulse shooter and this guy who blew up kind of a telephone type of thing. They're busy kind of setting us up, right? So, but I'm only speculating. I'm not a theorist of any type. Darren, what do you think?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with what happened with Ali.
Well, in terms of Ali was leading the Stop the Steal. Ali's a friend of mine. I've been very supportive of Stop the Steal. I think it's going to become very important because MAGA is effectively done, right? So the only mobilized force of dissent is going to be Stop the Steal, right? It was going to become something else. Stop the Steal was kind of the root Latin word, and the plan was it was going to become something else after they had time to build up an infrastructure and stuff and build up capacity. So they effectively, so what they did is they, so he had organized Stop the Steal. He was really the leader of it, and you did see how that went, right? And the narrative of it is pretty consistent. They were Trump protesters. So when this person Allison says, "Do you think he was set up?" They mean in terms of his complicity and culpability within the violence yesterday. So what do you think of that?
I mean, I don't know I assume that he wasn't complicit. I haven't seen anything. I'm not in a position to comment on this because I don't know what he was doing, but I'm aware of him. I'm disposed to like him. I can't comment on that.
You would like him. You know why I know you'd like him? Because you and I have said the same things, and I've discussed it with Ali as well. I didn't care if Loeffler won. In fact, I prefer she lost because she was a palooka. She was there to take a dive in the second round, and
right. Well, that's an interesting. So this bit about the constant extortion against American patriots that's leveled against them by the GOP, and this is why I think we are moving from a persuasion to a coercion model in some degree. I do think it's interesting how this transition is going to occur because I think unlike China, I think we're basically a tyranny like China is. But unlike China, we require the illusion of being a free society far more than Chinese do. The super weapon of the American regime is not its nukes. It's not the Amazon supply chain. The super weapon of the American regime is its vast propaganda apparatus. And that's why through revolver.news, I've drawn attention to a truly evil organization called the National Endowment for Democracy, which is the propaganda arm of the American regime, which has attacked Trump, it's attacked populism, and its sister organization, Bellingcat, was just on Twitter today trying to dox and expose and destroy the people who were involved in the protests the other day. But the super weapon of the American regime is its propaganda machine that is able to a large degree to simply create reality for its inhabitants, create narratives for its inhabitants. And I think the narrative of America being a free country, of being a noble country, of being a moral country, that narrative, even as we see every powerful institution in the country corrupt to its core, from the FBI to the CIA to the DOJ to every major corporation in this country, corrupt to the core, even as you see that Americans require this myth that the American regime is a noble country. If that myth evaporates as we move from this persuasion to coercion model, I think that could be profoundly disruptive. It's not precedented for the American people. And I think it's a very delicate type of transition to be made, actually. And I think it's actually a difficulty for the power structure to navigate that transition.
And we're going to go on, right? Thank you. That was really, really interesting. I'm going to think about that propaganda that was our, in fact, I'm going to go back to that. So let me turn this off for a second. Really interesting comment, because Hollywood was always selling America, right? They were our best salesperson, which people, right, sometimes don't understand. My fondness for Tom Cruise isn't just his success, but the guy sold America. There's just no doubt about it. Clark Gable sold America. Humphrey Bogart sold America. And in fact, Nancy's assistant is Pakistan, and unfortunately, sadly, her father's sick, but he's doing better. And we were discussing Tom Cruise, because I always do, right? And I asked him who's the best American movie star of all time, and finally he said Tom Cruise. But before that, when he was in Pakistan, he was watching Clark Gable movies. It was Clark Gable that sold him America. And yesterday at the gym, I was watching Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler, I think it was, or versus Tommy Hearns. And the Ray Charles was leading the national anthem. I mean, it was beautiful, not just melodically beautiful, but in terms of everybody's appreciation, everybody convening around this one thing that means so much to people. And it was just really interesting. So I see what your point is, the propaganda.
The reason I got a little bit sidetracked with that propaganda point and how it relates to the Kelly Loeffler issue is that I do think that there's something important to having this fiction of a two-party system, to keep people engaged in this retail politics on the two-party level, and in particular, keeping people engaged in the kind of tribal behavior of simply supporting their team for its team's sake and having the team be the party rather than a particular issue. I think the parties can't really be in a vehicle for the expression of people's power in the way that special interests are that operate through parties. There's a distinct way that those operate. And if you're just going to support Republican because they're not the left and you're angry at the left, you're always going to get played by the two-party dynamic that will always cash out in a fashion that ends up screwing you.
Okay, I'm going to go on. Family Feud now, because there's a lot of questions here and I really want to be responsive. And I'm going to take this one first, but then I'm interested in your kind of propaganda outlook, because you've made some really great observations of it. So Beansy Gata, thank you so much for joining us. And is that your picture or is that an actor? Because whoever it is looks cool. Says, will the rest of the world turn their back on China or just the Biden administration? I've covered this a lot in the investor series. I did something with Leyland Miller, who founded China Beige Book, about this. as a lot of people know, I'm a specialist on certain elements and aspects of China. I've also had the same conversation with the heads of intel of two different countries, because my insight's been pretty spot on, and they know my relationship to certain economic things within China and the U.S., and they have very opaque loans, so I've done a lot of forensics on them. And I don't think I think that Biden was the best thing that ever could have happened to China. I really do. And I certainly value what Darren said. I'm going to have to contemplate how it can now become kind of like this special purpose vehicle for the military industrial complex to bundle some money. I mean, he's that's Darren, and I'm going to have to contemplate that, right? But the investment deal that China just did, the Chinese Communist Party just did with Europe, is horrific. I can't even tell you that. If you read my thread that I wrote about what Chinese Communist Party did within Bolivia, there's other things I didn't write about it. And one of the demands of China is that their contracts are single source contracts. One of the demands are that the labor is China, and that they don't have any requirement to use indigenous labor. And one of the other demands is that all the labor that they bring over from China must immediately become citizens and are entitled to all the benefits. And that's very socially disruptive. So, Darren, what's your thought?
There you go. No, I don't think the world's going to turn back on China at all. Quite the opposite. I think China has made substantial inroads into Africa, at least compared to the United States. I think you're seeing that happen in Europe. And frankly, and again, like let me draw an analogy between Kelly Loeffler and how I'm beginning to think about geopolitics, and that is, you have patriotic American voters who are not represented by the Republican establishment that purports to represent them, who says, "Oh, we're the lesser of two evils. Just do what we say. We'll continue to screw you over. We'll continue to allow your freedoms to be taken away. Forget that." And the way that functions is the way I think that the American regime functions now on the geopolitical stage. Namely, if you can make an argument, why support the Republican establishment when it does nothing for you? Why root for the American regime on the global stage? How much does that actually translate to the?
We got a lot of questions here, Darren. We got a lot.
Okay. But just to finish this point, how much does that actually translate to the well-being of and freedoms of actual Americans? How much of it is just giving more loot to the corporations and institutions that control the country that actively hate the American people? And I think if they want us to get engaged with their spoils system confrontation with China, they need to stop taking away our freedoms domestically. If they want us to get engaged in this geopolitical issue that they're trying to get.
Okay, we got the next question. Water, please. We got the next question, right? So, social caliber, and thank you, Darren. I'm only cutting you off because we're friends, right? This is a friendly dinner, right? And I don't drink alcohol at all, so I only order water. But if I was drinking alcohol, it'd be perhaps even louder. I don't know. But social caliber, thank you so much for being here. Says, I always wondered how social credit could be implemented here. Darren, you've been kind of socially credited, right? They gave you a score.
Sure. No, I mean, social credit absolutely functions here. And it functions in an overt way. It functions in a kind of more subtle way. But absolutely, if you violate the dictates of political correctness, which is basically this, the religion of the American regime at this point, you will be subject to punishments that make it more difficult to earn a livelihood, that make it more difficult to just enjoy the basic conveniences of life, which are increasingly integrated with these companies that you're talking about. So I think it's absolutely, it functions slightly differently from how it works in China, but there absolutely is a de facto social credit system in the United States.
So in China, I'm sorry, I talked over you.
No,
And
no,
I didn't mean to that time.
no, fine.
In China, basically, it's a different people operating system, and all the tech companies there, which have been just as the American companies here, kind of take over the government, right? And they just preserve the facade, right? You've made that point. In China, the CCP infiltrates the tech companies and just kind of preserves their facade, their functional facade, but it's really kind of a money laundering scheme. And there's just a lot of things, and it's complex. So I don't really want to get into it too much here. But so in America, in China, there's one central repository for all that information. For everything about Darren in China, there would be one central repository that the government manages. And in America, one of the significant differences is that it's kind of surveillance capitalism. So Facebook has their kind of information. They each have this proprietary information. So there is that kind of difference. Also in China, there is a definition of a good citizen. America has never had a definition of what a good citizen is until now. Right now, it seems that there is a definition of a good citizen, so they can start being the corporate powers can start being malicious and very coercive in their tactics to force everybody into that good citizenship box.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a very effective mechanism of social control, and it's yet another dimension along which the US is converging with China, at least on this moral freedom dimension. And there's really, very little moral high ground with which we can prosecute this new Cold War with China that really has to do more with preserving the loot system for ruling class factions that hate the American people rather than anything materially beneficial to the actual American people.
So earlier, you asked me to name the 5 most powerful people in the United States, right? And it turned out there were 7 just off the top of my head. So that was the org chart, right? And eventually they're all going to compete for who's there can only be one, right? Like Highlander. But first they have to clean up the plebs. And I think they look at the plebs. I think they look at humanity as a startup, as a flawed business model, and they want to tweak it, and that's got a lot of cruelty to it. But I will say, so before you asked about the most powerful people, but you've actually answered that question. You said it was going to be kind of a bizarre question, but you've actually answered your own bizarre question with a very rational answer, because the judiciary has not been prosecuting these people, the Trump, people particularly. It's been the tech companies. They've displaced our judiciary. They've displaced our legislative branches. They just haven't announced it yet. Everyone's waiting in America for for Facebook just to announce themselves as kind of the ruler. It's not going to happen that way. They don't need to. So here I want to go to Lex Yusi. Thank you so much for being here. Says our leaders act like they want a feudal society. I'll answer that first because it's quick. They do want a feudal society. 100%. They do. They want to they want to rule lord-like over their little regions, right? It's they want to be the princes. Darren, what do you think?
Yes, I mean, I think that's fairly uncontroversial at this point. They want feudal society. And it's one of those things that, feudal society can mean many things. It's not necessarily the structure of society that I advocate, but I don't think simply describing the game plan as wanting a feudal society is I don't think it fully does justice to the evil and ugliness of what's going on. I think if you look at this religion of political correctness, which celebrates ugliness in all, it really, there's nothing redeeming about it. You could have an elite that wants a feudal society that has a kind of elevated sensibility, that has a sense for good art, that has a sense for nobility, that has a sense for glory and great achievements, instead of this just technocratic, soulless nerd like Jeff Bezos. And let me finish this. And so the real toxicity of this system is not even the inequity of it, or the fact that it's not egalitarian, or even necessarily the fact that most people will be disenfranchised and immiserated. Is that there's no redeeming greatness and beauty on the other side. You have corrupt, ugly, and completely unworthy people at the top. And that is really the most disgraceful feature of what's going on. And so just to say that it's a feudal society doesn't capture that central
Yeah,
of
yeah,
our ruling class.
yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot also, and you're right. I mean, you said it a little bit more eloquently than I would have. But our elites suck. They're not preserving. They're not preserving culture. They're not preserving language, and they're kind of stupid, right? Because Mitt Romney is not his dad or his dad's dad.
Absolutely. They're and the thing is that there are a lot of these theories about what is the vehicle to which we get to feudal society. Well, one way you can kind of deconstruct a society and rearrange its power structure is to support movements and really cultural trends that disintegrate society. And that involves inversion of values. It involves promoting trends that make it harder to have a family, and therefore you have a more atomized and vulnerable population. But then at a certain point, the means to create power become an end in itself. You sell yourself, as you said, the salesmen sell themselves, and all of a sudden there's this dominant culture that is this poison that is so inextricably and deeply connected to the American power structure and the American regime, to the point that the expression of American power overseas is precisely to force this very same poison down unwitting tribesman's throat, and that's really where we are now. And I think it's a sort of dystopia that's unprecedented in its scope and in its ugliness.
You're like that. I've been watching a lot of fights lately because I'm trying to get back in shape. I am in good shape, and going to the gym a lot.
That's an amazing.
I am in great shape, but my suits are all custom tailored, and they were custom tailored for me at a 32-inch waist, and right now it's probably like 33 and a quarter, so it's kind of awkward, right? I've got like when I tight, there's no belt, so when I put them really tight, I've got like that fat thing that's over it, and it's really embarrassing. It's kind of like whatever. But in any event, so I've been watching a lot of like old legendary fights like Hearns and Hagler and Sugar Ray and Muhammad Ali. And like Hearns would always hit you after the bell. And Evander Holyfield would always use his head. That's you. You're like Evander Holyfield. You're headbutting me. It's awesome. I want to be responsive to this, and I want to continue going on. Enrico Palazzo, thank you so much for being here, says, but boards of megacorps are pro-China, don't care about any single country. Well, I will say that George Soros has, and I like George Soros. A lot of people here know I know him, and I've got no criticism of him. Oligarchs be oligarching, right? And but I will say that he's always been very pro-China. And I've got something else to say, so I want to contribute to that. But I remember years ago during 2016, 2015, Bill Clinton making a statement, which I still think about. He said, people are unrulable. And now I think about it because I've acquired some words that I've tried to apply to that, which is people are unrulable. They're torn apart by centrifugal force. They're atomized. They're solipstic, which is a word I just learned, but they're solipstic. And, it's, I forget what else I said, because I came up with this like nifty slogan, but it sucks. So megacorp suck. Okay. So I forget what I was going to say because you hit me on the head after the bell. Tracy Liu, thank you so much for being here. And
can I say one word about Soros and China? Looking at all of your viewers should look at this to get an indication of what I'm saying. I'm saying that the total West, the Anglo power structure, and George Soros's fortune and standing is very much integrated into the Anglo power structure. The entire Anglo power structure, but principally the United States, is geared up for a Cold War footing with respect to China. And George Soros, the paradigmatic globalist, recently came out with very negative statements about China. He says the US should not work closely with China on the coronavirus. Europe must recognize China for what it is. George Soros rips Trump and President Xi. So George Soros becoming a China hawk, I think, is really illustrates my thesis that there's a definitive convergence across all of the ruling class of the United States that, yes, they've used China to accumulate a lot of wealth off the backs of the American middle class. But now that they've accumulated all that wealth and in the process have helped to subsidize the growth of China into a serious competitor, wait a second, into a serious competitor, now the imperative is to preserve their loot against this rising geopolitical competitor, and that means neo-Cold War footing. And every single element of the American ruling class that matters is on board with this new posture.
You hit me in the head several times. You knocked me out. That's awesome. You're awesome. But we have a lot of questions, and I got to get to them. So Tracy Lou, thank you so much for being here. And I'm not sure if that's the same Tracy. Tracy follows, and I just bought your book, so I'm really excited about it. She asked, why does Darren say the UK is the most evil and ugly society on earth?
That's a great question. And I think it largely, like, part of it is what the UK really should represent. It is sort of the parent of the United States in many ways. It has a noble history. It has incredibly impressive achievements across a number of dimensions in the cultural domain, scientific and otherwise. And in a certain sense, it is the kind of cultural, historical, legal, and philosophical birthplace of a lot of these freedoms that we've all lost in the United States. And I think one remarkable transformation that's occurred in my lifetime, and that's deeply demoralizing, disappointing, is that the UK, I think, has basically abandoned the pretense of being a free society. And it's what I was getting to earlier, is that Americans, more so than Chinese, require this self-conception of being a free society. The UK has basically abandoned this in the past, say, 15 years. And all of the poisonous things that infect the United States exist in the UK and seem to exist at a more intense level, absent some of the partially redeeming characteristics of the United States. And so I think that it really is the kind of epicenter on a cultural and sociological level of Anglophone corruption, decay, and degeneracy.
That was awesome. So the real boss man, hey, I remember you. So from like an hour ago, right? Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. What's your thoughts on him? Everyone knows I'm a big Elon Musk fan. The next investor series I'm going to do is all about Space Force. Everyone's going to love it. And it's all about Space Force. It's all about the tech infrastructure that Space Force needs. And Elon Musk innovates. He is our Thomas Edison. He genuinely is. He's our Leonardo da Vinci. He is one of the greatest people in history, and I appreciate him. It doesn't bother me to say that, and I don't look for any type of scandals. I don't do retrospectives on his life and look at solar companies. You mark people to the market, and you say, who are the people that are doing great things, that are creating jobs for Americans, that are innovating, and that are leading people to space. And the one thing that really does bother me is you take a look at, and Darren, you should look at this. It's really interesting. Take a look at the American students and what they're getting degrees in. It's disgraceful. You're going to be speechless because they're not getting degrees in STEM. The indigenous students, particularly women, sadly, are getting degrees in liberal arts. They're getting degrees in arts, and they're getting degrees in human studies, whatever they call that stuff. Gender studies and human studies. And those don't create value for a society. We should not fund that stuff. It creates no value. Nancy's father was an engineer. Army paid for his college when he came back. He got an engineering degree. He created value, right? Elon Musk is creating value. Hopefully, we have the indigenous population here that can kind of reap that reward. But I do worry about it. I genuinely worry about it. So if that's my answer.
Well, look, I really Elon has, there's a lot one can admire. He, at least by billionaire standards, seems to exhibit some degree of courage, and it's amazing how risk averse these billionaires are. And I think that's another thing to consider is, what is the selection mechanism for our oligarchs? I don't think it selects for a propensity for bravery, for glory, anything. It's really mastering this kind of nerd-like managerial Tetris game, and that's how someone like Bezos got into power. And the factors that select for the people that make it to the top really have a kind of feedback loop effect on what kind of things you can get done politically and how you can work with these people at the top. And Musk, at least by those standards, as they say, the kind of applying the soft bigotry of low expectations when it comes to people of that sort. He has from Africa, so that's another kind of interesting dimension. But if Elon Musk, who has exhibited some degree of contempt for political correctness, if he could be radicalized against the kind of power structures that we're talking about, against the kind of political correctness that we're talking about, he perhaps has the money and the stature to maybe make a difference along those domains. If I had to guess, if Elon Musk started, being real right wing, I think the system could and would destroy him.
Oh yeah, definitely. We would definitely do that.
Gives you a sense of what where the power actually is, because if even Elon Musk couldn't embrace right wing positions publicly without getting destroyed, I mean, that does say something about the limitations of this kind of so-called oligarch's power as the richest man in the world. So
who else is really great is and I've met him 2 times before he went public and they did the roadshow, and I was really impressed, and is Mark Zuckerberg, who is kind of our Alexander the Great. I mean, you have to be appreciative of kind of all the burden that's being put on him in an extortion scheme from legacy media, extortion scheme from the elites who have, as you said before, they've lost a vital channel for their own propaganda, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want self-created content. And Facebook has changed the world. I mean, it just tore away, everything. And he's really our Alexander the Great. And it's, unfortunate, what's happened. But I appreciate it for what it is. I'm a huge Elon Musk fan. I mean, I can't wait to do this. I can't wait to do the one on Space Force. So we're going to continue. So Cam 2 Taylor, very important question, very interesting question. And you're the academic, Darren. So what will happen now with an illegitimate or a government that's perceived as being illegitimate? And let me say before that I had to understand this for my own chronicles. And I spent a lot of time on this reading Hobbes, who wrote a lot about the sovereign and sovereignty and the sovereign individuals, sovereign governments. And, he had said that the state is a product of a covenant or a compact, right? He said it's a contract of sort between individuals and that the sovereign, right? And we have a lot of them, unfortunately, owes their authority to the will of the consent of those that they govern. And that the sovereign is authorized really only to protect the interest of the governed. And one of the requirements there is that they maintain civil peace and security. And they failed us. These streets are getting violent, and they failed us in terms of maintaining that civilization, that society, and keeping us safe. Yeah,
well, I mean, the pedantic answer is that Hobbes doesn't quite say that there's a difference in the kind of contractual theory of Hobbes versus, say, the I think more widely read and theories of Locke. Hobbes really attributes unlimited power to the sovereign, and in fact, the subjects don't even make a contract with the sovereign. They simply make a contract amongst themselves to agree to serve the same sovereign, and the sovereign actually has no real obligations to the subjects. Hobbes tries to steer them in the direction of good governments, but really Hobbes was operating from a position of fear. And in fact, it's really the fear of violent death that drives Hobbes's political theory, that the purpose of a political society is to avoid bloody anarchy. And for that reason, Hobbes is willing to accept a degree of concentration of power and sovereign control that generally would seem unacceptable or highly undesirable to, I think, most people with our kinds of expectations. But it was a kind of step in the direction of contractual theory that led to kinder and gentler versions, such as Locke's, in which there really are obligations that apply to whatever leader is, or kind of structure is designated to be the legitimate authority. But Hobbes was very much against distributed power. He wanted all power concentrated in one place, in one sovereign, and was deeply concerned by any system where you had sort of multiple fiefdoms or multiple centers of power, because that could lead to violence. And his old political theory is trying to avoid violence, the so-called summum malum, the great evil of violence. So that's more of a
you just made me like, now I'm having to rip it out of my head. Do you know what you just did to my head? So let me, and that was brilliant. I really, really appreciate that, because I'm certainly not insisting.
But it gets to this thing of, constructing a political theory around what one wants to avoid. And, you're a master salesman and therefore a master psychologist, and you might agree with this insight. I think one real way to get a sense of who someone is to look at what they're running away from. Some people who are deeply motivated by money, for instance, they're running away from their impoverished childhood, and that's able to drive them and provide a sense of motivation that most people would find unusual. And there are different types of motivation, and it in many ways comes from a place of misfortune, something that they're running away from. And similarly, on a kind of political dimension, what Hobbes was trying to run away from was bloody anarchy, and he was willing to accept basically any kind of government, no matter what its abuses, so long as it didn't provide bloody anarchy. And so there might be some kind of
no. We'll have another discussion about it, just you and me, because I'm really interested. Because I concede that I concede kind of the domain of my own ignorance, right? So I'm trying to learn these things, but Cam 2 Taylor asked such an important question about what happens now with a government that's perceived as being illegitimate. That's a real problem.
I agree. And look, I can't, give a fully satisfactory answer, but I do think one kind of interesting thing to consider along those lines really is, like, how do you transition from a kind of persuasion-oriented mechanism of control that is connected to various pretty lies about what an institution is, lies that the FBI is a noble institution that's working for justice, lies that the CIA is working to advance, the security of Americans and so forth. What happens, or lies that oh, it's just this wonderful system of capitalism. And the reason that corporations are doing so well is that they're just providing great things to customers that we all love. And there's nothing else going on the top. All of these sort of surface illusions that serve to justify the interests of these institutions have really evaporated. And that's part of the delegitimization, this disruption that you mentioned that occurred under Trump. And it's going to be a very difficult road to navigate for the ruling class to see just at what pace and in what manner they can manage this transition in a fashion that actually can work. How can they move from this persuasion to coercion? Because
Darren, I got to click.
Yep,
I got to go.
Go ahead.
That's awesome. We're gonna and I hope that was responsive to everybody. There's just so many people here, and I just appreciate everybody's time so much. And we all have the same questions, and we all appreciate Darren so much that we get to kind of rip them apart, right? So I want to first be responsible to this. And it was also, I saw the same thing from D Suave. So I decided to put this one up instead. So my apologies, right? And Siddhartha Cal 1, thank you so much for being here. Says Soros is clever. People think POTUS can change things. Soros hacked the structure of our bureaucracy.
He did.
Oh no, that one you can talk about. I'm looking at other questions now. I want you to be responsive to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I have tremendous respect for Soros. I think you can just learn a lot from someone like that. He's an oligarch. And I think one thing, that's, if not redemptive, at least kind of, partially acceptable about him is that he is a worthy competitor. He's someone who is actually serious, and he has depth, and he really is an oligarch in the truest sense. And I think you can learn so much by reverse engineering everything that he's done. And you mentioned something very important called, what did you call it? The activist complex, the
industrial activist complex.
Right. And he's really created this. And there's this whole infrastructure that exists with interconnections between civil society groups and government and on the ground kind of activists and the media that he's created, that he's able to leverage through his control of NGOs, of State Department, and his political allies. This whole kind of ecosystem and how it functions is something that is really important, really sophisticated, and must be reverse engineered, and it especially along all of the dimensions in which there are these cross integrations, and it serves so many functions. And one of the simplest functions is that if you are aligned with Soros, there are so many jobs that were available through his various outfits that simply being able to employ people who are on your side through this vast kind of patronage network, even that is not nothing. I'm not suggesting that's sort of the principal source, but that's such a simple thing that doesn't even really exist on the right. And I think that people on the right are wondering, why do we always kind of lose? Well, the first step is really reverse engineering what Soros has done with his various networks and how they function. And they're deeply integrated into these Atlanticist NGOs that I've described, like the National Endowment for Democracy, the Atlantic Council, and so forth, which is in turn connected to the State Department and various other government groups. So understanding the linkages between those institutions is very important, and it's worthy of tremendous.
So when you think of these things, do you I don't think, I try and think of these things as kind of living organisms, right? So I try not, it's not like when I think of Soros, and I like Soros, by the way, but I don't think of him as evil or good. I just think of him as kind of like, if it's a living organism, I think about him maybe as a kidney or something, it takes up room in my body, but I really like it there. So, but again, I just look at these things as a living organism. There's a lot of complexity to these things, right? Is when you think of these things, Do you think of them in terms of evil, or how? Or I don't want to say Soros is evil because none of us are going to agree. Hopefully, that he's an evil person, complex person, right? He's a proxy for the government. But do you think of these people as kind of their intentions are pernicious and malicious? How do you kind of think of people like Soros, and I would even include probably Paul Singer within that, or the Kochs, or just kind of that whole apparatus of the oligarchs?
Well, I think no, it would diminish. No, let's put it this way: no great villain would think of himself as being evil. I don't think you can be a great villain if you think of yourself as being evil, because I think that's a very
How do
limited.
you think of them? I'm very interested in when you think of Soros, and I know that there's been a lot of writing about it in Revolver .news, and I remember Revolver when I was telling everyone that they got to check it out because it's going to grow, and you guys are doing fantastic things, really some brilliant stuff. Some of your stuff is actually in my Chronicle, right? I had to download.
You seen our interview with Julian Assange's fiance?
I did. So the thing I'm very interested in is, how do you kind of build your mental model of someone like Soros? Do you give him some type of attributes in terms of a personality, or properties in terms of intentions, good or evil, or how do you kind of think of these things?
Well, I mean, I think that he represents a power structure that has been, I think, pernicious, and it's not so much. I think there is a moral dimension, and I think Soros is responsible for great evil. And I wouldn't hesitate to call him evil, but I wouldn't reduce him. I wouldn't reduce him to evil, but I would call him evil because he has promoted precisely those disruptive mechanism that ruin the capacity for a healthy and functioning
But
society.
there has to be a cruelty just in governing, right? And
Right. And so I don't simply, I understand that anyone, in order to govern, will have to take certain measures that an ordinary person would consider perhaps morally questionable. I'm not someone who has this pristine view that power can be innocent, but I think power has to be judged in relation to its net effects. And I do not think that the net effects of what Soros has been promoting have been positive. And I think you could look at it from his point of view as to what exactly is he, running away from, what is his underlying psychology. But ultimately, I find that less interesting than his sophistication in terms of the apparatus that he was able to build, which I admire. I admire his willingness and capability to play for keeps, as does Paul Singer. And you see anyone on our side willing or able to play for keeps. And I think that that needs to be changed. But I do think ultimately you have to judge Soros by the fact that he's associated with a power structure and the promotion of a culture and a society that is essentially ugly. It is an ugliness that he's promoted in the world, and he's simply responsible for that, and that is evil.
I would say with some of these oligarchs that they don't have kind of the Medici type of Florence, their love of their Florence people. They don't have the common good. They don't have that love of their own people, and they just have the cruelty, right? So they have the cruelty that's essential for a great ruler, but they don't know even how to be good. So I don't think their cruelty is kind of well used, and we've discussed that in terms of
Well,
coronavirus.
I think that's well put. And cruelty can be necessary for great things. Cruelty can be, or at least destruction can be necessary for great things. Cruelty suggests an element of excess that may or may not be necessary, but certainly you need to, as they say, break eggs to make an omelet. But I judge Soros by the omelet, and the omelet is disgusting and rotten.
Well, so it's going to be interesting. You and I were discussing right before this, and a lot of us, you're young, you're 35, I'm 54. So a lot of us that are older than you remember all the lies that we were told to get into Iraq, to get into Afghanistan, and we're still there. And I remember the war on drugs, the war on hunger. I just remember so many wars, the wars on, that I knew COVID was just going to be kind of a, an endless war on sickness, right? And I knew it was never going to end. And I've been right. So, but it's going to be interesting because Trump was trying to get us out of Syria. He was trying to get us out of Afghanistan. And all of a sudden, the liberals and the left, all of a sudden, the anti-Trumpers, the Twitter anti-Trumpers particularly, became experts on the people of the Kurds. And I've been hearing about the Kurds, don't abandon the Kurds, for literally for about 30 years now. I remember it from George Bush 1, we can't abandon the Kurds, when there was only 1 million of them there. There's only 2 million of them there. We can, afford to resettle them. We could have resettled them in Greenland. But it's always interesting that a lot of the media prosecution against Trump was this kind of high-minded innocence. How can he stand there next to Z? How can he stand there next to Kim Jong-un? Who's the head of Korea? Well, whatever, North Korea. Yeah, okay. I was right. So I feel good. How can he stand next?
Yeah.
So there was this kind of, the media was just pushing out this kind of high-minded, type of innocence. And they demanded that it be imposed upon, the actual running of a government. And they even kind of brought, a religion into it, like this Christian humanitarianism, that he's a bad man for doing this because people are dying. And now that, Biden is in office, and the wars and more bombs are going to drop, I think that all of a sudden people are going to forget the Kurds. All of a sudden their naivety is going to be, instead of a politically aware, I suppose, agitating type of naivety and kind of push, it's going to be a naivety in the other direction, right? It's going to be kind of interesting. I think about these things a lot because I really want these wars to end. And I think you even quoted me in Revolver, or a tweet I said about that. DM Suave, thank you so much for being here. Darren, this is for you because we got a lot of questions. I got to rip through them. Who are the most powerful oligarchs who could be warm to conservatives?
Well, I mean, I would hope aspirationally Elon Musk might be warm, if not to conservatives, at least to kind of attacking certain exceptionally distasteful elements of the regime. For instance, political correctness as it exhibits itself in corporate culture. I think that might be a possibility. I hope he gets a little bit braver now that he's the richest man in the world. It seems like there's sometimes an inverse relationship between how much money people make and how brave they actually are.
Vulnerable. That also makes him kind of more vulnerable to brute force attack from Congress and legislatively.
Congress. I mean, no. I mean, he can give me $30 million and I'll take care of Congress for him.
Yeah.
Like you can buy Congress with what he would consider to be a breadcrumb.
Thank you very much. So Ridge 2100, thank you so much for being here. This is more part of the investor series, so please include it within the next one. Would you still buy Boeing, Tesla, and Amazon stock? I've never owned Amazon stock. I've been hearing not to buy Boeing for 12 years now, and I've heard it is too high now, and since then it's gone up 15-fold. So please, definitely ask it during the investor series so I can discuss Boeing a lot more, and Boeing is going to come up a lot. This is really interesting. So thank you so much for being here, Rising Serpent. So Rising Serpent says, observes that leaders have already gone from kind of public availability and intimacy to Zoom. Have you thought about that at all, Darren?
About the implications of this?
About the distance now that they've gotten from their electorate. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't thought about that specifically,
right?
but I definitely think that there are implications to this kind of massive increase in remote work that could be sticky into the indefinite future. I don't know if the Zoom thing in particular means that leaders are less connected. I don't, their inability to, I say, do rallies at home, to do meet and greets, that might have some kind of effect. But I think the general effect.
How can they engage with their electorate in a meaningful way? For example, about taxes or some type of really consequential type of way, if they limit their actual intimacy and engagement that they're willing to have?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it could be one of many, many, many downstream ramifications to this ridiculous COVID scam, this lockdown scam that's been visited on the American population, much of the global population, the biggest crime against humanity apart from war crimes.
It is, and it's something, I was probably the first person that I know of, because I saw it happening in China, and I knew that as China was a leading indicator that we were going to adopt it here. I call it not just dark city, but I call it, and I think I got the language after our first Periscope, but I call this, now I forget what I call it because the pressure's on me, right? What do I call this? Oh yeah, I call this the trolley problem. That right now, what's happening throughout the entire world is every single person is now, it's now demanded that they find a solution to the trolley problem. They then stand in front of the class, present their solution, have to get unanimous approval of their solution, which is something that is impossible to achieve in such a solipsistic, kind of atomized, society, right? We've been torn apart, that we don't even share a language anymore. We can't even decide on, definitions of words. We can't get agreement on a moral language anymore. So I just don't see any way to resolve this ever. I think this is just kind of the state we're going to be in. So, Kier Kettle, thank you so much for being here. I like that image. I forget what that's from, but it's really funny. So Kier Kettle, thank you so much for being here. Says and Darren, this is all for you, right? And I got to look at other questions. So
I actually have an answer to this.
Awesome.
And it's not, there are philosophical works from the Renaissance period, but I think an interesting treatment of the period from a intellectual historian view is a book called Theology and the Scientific Imagination by Amos Funkenstein. And
what was that first word?
Theology.
Can you? It's rude, but I'm googling it right now.
Theology. Theology.
Oh, I know how to spell theology. Could you repeat the entire name of the book?
Yep. Theology and the Scientific Imagination. I think that's the title. I could be.
Yeah, no, you got it. Theology and Scientific Imagination.
Yep.
It's a pioneering work of intellectual history. So we better buy it in hard copy now, right?
Yeah, you better. I like your idea about, having physical copies. You have a tweet with your library saying, nobody can tinker with the information stored.
What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next is take a book like that, right? It's still going to exist in some form, but it's going to be, there's going to be different versions of it generated, right? And you and I will not be able to compare notes on the alterations that have been made to the book. So some people are going to read a Charles Dickens that's been completely kind of altered in such a way as to take out any type of language or any type of kind of real thought, right? And me, because I can afford a little bit more, will read the pristine Charles Dickens. I'll read all, because there's so little intimacy left within our society that we'll never have a chance to compare notes. We're not going to see the third world people within the United States. We're going to see a real poverty divide. So I just Googled that book. So I'm going to repeat it for everybody because everybody likes to exchange good books. Nancy, my wife, just read a book called I think The Hiroshima Maidens, which is about the what happened to those young girls after the bomb dropped. Incredible story. So read that one too. So the book is Theology and the Scientific Imagination.
Yep.
Thank you. That was awesome. So we're going to continue on. Wizard predicts, and we've become friends. So thank you so much for joining us. And allow me to make this introduction. And how convenient, right? Darren, Wizard predicts. Wizard predicts. Darren.
Pleasure.
Awesome. So Wizard predicts asks, where do we go from here? Chart a long-term course for returning power to the common man.
Well, I mean, that's a longer discussion, but I think we should not focus inordinately on electoral politics. I think that we can, getting back to kind of reverse engineering what the infrastructure that Soros created, we can start small, but I think there are a lot of things we can do that are not related to electoral politics that could, in fact, redound to greater power for the common man, for people on the right. I think one thing we need to understand that you learn kind of from the Trump experience is that there is really populism is a myth in the sense that populism must be combined by genuine buy-in by at least a faction of the ruling class. Otherwise, it is ineffectual. I think you need, and so what we need to do is have a kind of rhetoric, have an approach that's appealing to a prospective emerging elite that's actually a good elite and not corrupt, dysfunctional, ugly, and unworthy and illegitimate like our present elite. And I think this is a longer term issue. 15 years is generous in terms of the time horizon. I think it's crucial to have people who are educated politically online rather than on cable and in talk radio. And those people were, probably in their 20s, 30s, maybe. They need to have time, God willing, to make their own fortunes, strike out their own fortunes, and then actually start to fund things in a sophisticated way that could actually work. But I think the mindset needs to be play for keeps. I think we need to understand leverage and actually how to visit real pain, not, physical pain, but pain in the metaphorical sense on institutions and political enemies. And that this is not necessarily achieved through electoral politics. This can be achieved through institutions. This could be achieved through, for instance, a mechanism that is able to impose costs on journalists who smear people or engage
Those
in.
institutions, I'm interrupting, right? But we're friends, and now all three of us are friends because Wizard and I are friends as well. So, but can those institutions be punctured? One of the interesting things that I saw about Ali, right, was Stop the Steal, because I'm a supporter of it. I think dissent is important and it needs a vehicle, right? Is that as soon as he punctured kind of the conformity of the conservatives, right? As soon as he said, "Hey, what's Loeffler ever done for us?" Right? As soon as he punctured that conformity of the conservatives, they cast him out, and it was kind of self-sealing, right? They he punctured it, and then it was like
There's a lot of vulnerability on the institutional right. There's a lot that can be captured with the right.
Does that give room for building something new that really can have force and can acquire momentum and real brute force?
Yeah, I think over the next 15 years, really, it will be a matter of building networks, building money, and developing skills for when there's actually a real opening. And that I think will occur probably in 15 years. And so I think principally the focus needs to be on networks, resources, And in 15 years or so, there might be a real kind of opening and honing skills. And so that's the other thing is people, the superficial function of an endeavor doesn't need to be its actual purpose. Something can look like one thing, but actually be a pretense in which to develop skills that would be useful in a different context. And I think so that may be just intuitively useful to understand like how one could go about developing useful skill sets under some kind of appropriate cover if one didn't want to kind of invite the eye of Sauron or coordinated attacks that are visited upon, overt critics of the American regime or political correctness and so forth.
When you say 15 years, that means that you're referring to, I think, right? People who are right now maybe 20 years old because they have to acquire economic wealth. They've got to acquire economic capital, social capital, right? Political capital. And that's going to be the generation growing up today. Will they be those people?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, one can never tell, but I do think there's something to having that. Like, there's just so much dumb money in politics. And I do think so much of the right is beholden to the political blind spots and the tastes of baby boomers. And it's nothing against baby boomers, but I do think ultimately it imposes certain type of bottleneck to the type of thinking that we need in the longer term. And I think there's some kind of incubation that can occur presently, but it's really a type of preparation. And I do think that one thing not to get too distracted by is electoral politics or this thing of this constant disappointment as, oh, this time we'll primary the
I rang the bell and you hit me in the nose. I rang the bell, you hit me in the nose. I rang the bell. You heard the bell. Okay, so listen to this. Now I forgot. You punched me and now I've got a little bit of a concussion. Okay, so let me ask you a question. The 20-year-olds today, the propaganda they've received over the last 20 years is that America is a failed country and we've broken apart. And part of the mythology that they've built into Bitcoin is that it's the end of the American empire and it's every person for themselves. So I want my own proprietary currency. And honestly, it's $40,000 now. So it's worked. So that brings me to the next question. So Keir Cattell, again, thank you for being here. Great question. Is it preferable for the U.S. To atomize and break apart? That is part of the philosophy of the Bitcoiners, and they are developing on that philosophy. And Keir Cattell continues, keep talking Heidegger.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear Heidegger requests. Is it preferable for U.S. to atomize and break apart? Preferable to what? I mean, preferable to what we have now? I don't know. I don't think that's, atomize is one thing. That's what's already been occurring. Atomization on an individual level is, I don't think, a positive development. Breaking apart into little enclaves, I do see some kind of shift into federalism whereby, for instance, Florida is an example of people starting flocking to Florida as the kind of redoubt of people who don't necessarily subscribe to the COVID fanaticism and so forth. I do think that has its limits. I don't see a kind of real full-on secession movement becoming anything real, certainly not without any kind of outside involvement. There's for people interested, I believe it's like chapter 3 of Machiavelli's Prince, where he talks about how outside powers get engaged in domestic conflicts, and that could be an interesting game changer should that occur. But I see surprisingly little rhetorical intervention into U.S. affairs from foreign competitors. For instance, I think it would be interesting if, someone like Putin made positive gestures to disenfranchised Americans, or, for instance, qualified Americans who were denied access to an elite institution because of affirmative action or whatever. If Putin said, okay, people who meet these qualifications can come here to Russia, we'll have your social capital and so forth, or for that matter, China doing something.
Well, Machiavelli also said, and I think about it a lot. He said, a prophet with a weapon, prophet with arms, will always be a prophet without a weapon, without arms. Really interesting.
Yep.
Really interesting. So I want to.
He was not big on mercenaries, so
he wasn't, and he wasn't big on auxiliaries. And one of the things he said, and we were talking about this right before, and he's actually my favorite of the kind of political scientists. I've read a lot of them.
Wrap up though, just so you know. So
yeah, we all need to wrap. But there's a lot of questions, so I'm going to ring the bell, man, because we're almost ready. So there's a lot of questions here. So one of the now you got me confused. Okay, so I'm going to just take a quick question. I'm going to respond to it myself. Steve Pedian, how can you thank you so much for being here. How can you defend someone who supports orgs that undermine U.S. society, culture, and history? Look, if you think Soros is bad, you're on the wrong target, because you got oligarchs today that don't have the empathy of a George Soros. And if you take a look at who the kind of tech oligarchs are, they tend to be very testosterone-y with Asperger's in their own type of way. So they just have not testosterone. They just don't have a lot of empathy for their fellow human beings. Again, they look at it as a flawed business model. Soros is humble. He gives a lot to charities. He's very aware of kind of his contributions to charities. But oligarchs be oligarching, right? So it's pretty different. So SDE Wheezy, Darren, this is for you. Like Tucker Carlson said, they hate nature. The oligarchs in this country hate nature.
I think that's largely true, and they hate beauty and nobility and excellence because they don't embody those things. And I would like to see a kind of society that selects for people with those qualities to be preeminent at the top of society, rather than people who embody and celebrate and promote ugliness.
So Awake 3 Ning, thank you so much for being here. And Darren, this is all for you, because we got a lot of questions and I want to rip through them really quick, but I want you to take your time with this, because I'm going to go through the questions. The Miami mayor, who I'm going to be doing a Periscope with, by the way, is, and you were just discussing this, the Miami mayor is trying to bring tech to Miami. He's really acting as kind of an emissary to the rest of the country. He is doing a good job of bringing it into his fiefdom.
I think that's a positive sign, but it shouldn't be overblown. I think there are limits to that, and I hope to be proven wrong. I think it's
what do you feel the limits are?
Most of the people coming down are New York. I think the chief limit is the lack of a major and serious research university in Florida.
Wow. That's, you know what? You're right. They don't have the reservoir of talent that a New York has. I think Ian Sigler just did one of my investor series, and I didn't make the connection because he said that New York is still a requirement because we do have the alpha here, right? We've got the university system here. And I see your point, just intellectually, academically, kind of STEM-wise, really interesting point. I didn't think about that. You're awesome, Darren. So Darren, this is for you. Philip Bertrand, thank you so much for being here. And I like that kind of image that you've used, right? I'm an art fan, so I think that's kind of arty, right? So this is for you, Darren. I've got the same question. Have you ever considered writing a book about America?
I have, and I put it into abeyance, and I might resurrect the project when I have more free time. So yes, I have considered it, and I hope one day, not too far from now, to re-engage with that project.
Yeah, and I read the paper that you got criticized for, right? The CNN blasted you, and it cost, it had its real toll, unfortunately,
Right.
and it was absurd. So I'm looking forward to that book also,
Thank
because
you.
there's so much there that you had to kind of collapse into just a couple of 1,000 words. It was really good. We're gonna close on that.
All
Uh,
right.
and I've had so much fun. There's so many questions here. I just appreciate everybody's time and everybody's thoughtfulness. And I've seen all the comments, and everybody's been so respectful to myself and to Darren. And these times have a lot of anxiety, so I'm just so appreciative that all of us had a chance to have this conversation. And Philip Bertrand, you're going to be the closing comment. So when I press close for the rest of time, it's going to be like you forever there. So thank you so much, Darren. When I press end broadcast,
Yep.
everybody else is going to be going, but it's still going to be you and me, so we can say goodbye to each other as well.
Wonderful.
And you'll see me eating my M&Ms because that's my thing, right? So I really want to thank everybody so much for joining us here. It was a lot of fun. I've been waiting so long to do a part 2 with Darren, and we did it. And I love it. I think it came at the right time. We couldn't do it before because people had too much emotional engagement. They were emotionally exhausted. And now I think people are very quickly trying to replenish their emotional reservoir. And that's what makes this conversation so important, I think.
Great. Well, it was another great discussion. And for viewers who are interested, go visit revolver.news, which is the site that I mentioned. You might like it. It's where a lot of interesting political material is being put out, including an interview with Julian Assange's fiance and ruminations on contemporary events. So if you're into that sort of thing, go to revolver.news. And other than that, thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much. We're going to say goodbye to everybody. And thank you for allowing Darren and myself to be the guest on your feed today. And thank you very much. And everybody, goodbye.